you're watching Gearz, brought to you by Cornwell Tools, the choice of professionals.
Hey, welcome to Gearz. If you're wondering what the heck this is, you're probably not alone. This is an ultra-rare, amphibious off-road vehicle built by Thiokol. It's called a Swamp Spryte. And this is one of only 3 or 4 known to still exist. So yeah, this is a pretty rare find. Now, we've already walked through the unique history of these and why Thiokol built them. We laid out some modifications that we're going to do. We even took it on a test drive to showcase some of the capabilities and limitations that this kind of rig has. So, today we are going to dig even deeper into the restoration of this old swamper, so we eventually have something that's even better than rolled off the showroom floor back in '63. Now, obviously, the focal point of any tracked vehicle are the tracks. And as you can see, you don't have to look very hard to see that these tracks need some serious help. The axles are sagging due to age and broken springs. The bogie wheels are cracked and barely holding air. The inner wheel guides have been re-welded numerous times. The outer grousers are rusty and broken. The belts are chipped and worn. And the drive sprockets are chewed up due to the poorly welded wheel guides. Considering the shape of these 60-year-old tracks, we were really lucky that they didn't completely fall apart and leave us stranded on the test drive. Fortunately, the tracks and the undercarriage on these vehicles are pretty simple to work on and replace. So obviously the first thing you need to do is get those tracks off. And the concept here is very similar to taking off your bicycle chain when you were a kid, just on a much, much bigger scale. The belted track design is pretty simple in that it uses a long bolt as a master link to hold the belts together, but it won't just slide out due to track tension. So first you'll need to relieve the tension by airing down the tires or loosening the adjuster to get the slack that you need to remove the bolt. Then you get to fight with the bolt until it finally comes out. Now you can just roll the vehicle off the tracks.
Here we go.
All right, as you can see, there is literally nothing that we can reuse on these tracks. The wheel guides, the grousers, the rubber, it's all shot. But that's okay, because we're just gonna roll this up and send the whole mess up to Right Track Systems in Canada. They specialize in building replacement tracks for snow vehicles, off-road vehicles, construction equipment, you name it. And those new tracks will include new wheel guides, grousers, rubber belts, hardware, everything. So if you need replacement tracks, or if you just want to put tracks on something, these guys can help you out. Okay, with the tracks out of the way, we can get a look at what they've been hiding. And it's not pretty. Take a look at this. You can see these tires are completely shot. But believe it or not, these old rims are actually reusable. But the good news here is these wheels and tires are exactly what you would find today on a trailer. So replacements are cheap and easy to find. Now, the sprocket, it's a little different deal because these are obviously unique to the Thiokol vehicles. And as you can see, they are chewed up pretty bad on this vehicle, probably from those nasty welds and sharp edges that somebody left on the wheel guides. They were just wallowing in there chewing that rubber up. So these are going to have to be recovered. Fortunately, there's a company out there called Fall Line, and you ship them off your sprocket, they strip it down, and they recover it with urethane, which is much stronger and much more durable. But considering these are 60 years old, I'd say that old rubber did a pretty good job. Now, the axles, well, that's where things get crazy, because what you're looking at here is an early 60s version of a torsion axle with these crazy coil springs on the ends. Now, obviously, you've seen some of our coils are broken, some of our axles are bent, all pivot points are all wallowed out. No, we are not reusing this. We're going to replace them with modern torsion axles, once again, just like what you'd find on a trailer. So, replacing your axles, wheels and tires, getting your sprockets recoated is not that expensive on a tracked vehicle. Your main cost is going to be in your new tracks.
Metal. It's one of the key components of what we build and fabricate with. But if you can't shape it and cut it, you can't build with it. For over 50 years, Woodward Fab has been supplying the tools and technical advice to get the job done right. Bead rollers, brakes, shears, tubing benders. You'll find what you need whether you're a professional metal worker or just starting out. Woodward Fab, shaping metal since 1966.
Hey, welcome back. As you can see, the old Swamper looks a lot different with the tracks off and partially disassembled. It doesn't look like a hardcore off-road rig anymore. Kind of looks like something you take on a hayride or something. Now, I know you've probably heard the statement, there's more than one way to skin a cat. And that might be true if you're talking about a snow cat. But if you're talking about a swamp sprite, there are some things you have to do when you're addressing the skin on these things if you want it to be watertight and float, which is kind of the point of an amphibious vehicle. So we're going to dig into the skin on this thing and show what we have to do to make this thing float again. Okay, the basic construction of the Swamp Spryte is an aluminum skin riveted over a steel frame. So obviously, every single seam will need to be sealed underneath so no water gets in. But that's not all. The rivets themselves are an issue too. Notice that these original rivets are solid, but somewhere down the road, somebody replaced this skin and they put standard rivets in. Now you can tell the difference because the standard rivet has this little center stud, and that will allow water to seep by. And when you multiply that by hundreds and hundreds of rivets, that's a lot of water coming in. So we need to pull all these rivets out and come up with a better solution when we replace the aluminum skin. Now, speaking of skin, we can tell by the construction and all of the rivets that everything forward of the cab is the original 1963 sheet metal and rivets, and they're actually in really good shape. So we're going to clean this up, knock out a few dents, replace a few rivets, that kind of thing. However, underneath, it's a completely different story. Take a look. For some reason, all the lower aluminum panels were replaced with some sort of cheap fiberglass that's broken and missing and full of holes all across the bottom. And to add insult to injury, they used the same leaky rivets as above. So all of these rivets, all of these panels need to come out. Yeah, all of them. The only good news here is that we can use these old panels as a pattern to make our new aluminum ones. Another thing to remember when you're changing the body, or the skin in this case, of your project vehicle is now is the time to change the things that you don't like. For example, this is your original fuel filler that went to the original tank under the seat. But it's not there anymore, obviously, because we're putting a new fuel tank under this bench. So when we make our new panel, we're going to delete this hole and put our new filler neck in the proper place. These cheap aftermarket marker lights that somebody added have to go, as well as these tail lights that are too low and close to the water line. The same goes for the exhaust outlet, and these front headlights that somebody cut into the body. On an amphibious vehicle, all the lights, air intakes, and exhaust need to be mounted as high as possible and properly sealed so they not only handle water, but also the waves and the splashes and other surprises that can happen in an off-road environment with deep water. Okay, to remove these rivets, you want to make sure that you don't wallow out the hole in the metal on the backside, or you'll have to drill out the hole and go to a bigger rivet, and we don't want to do that. So we're going to take a punch, put it right in the center of the mandrel on the rivet, then we'll take our hammer, and we'll drop that mandrel back into the rivet. Then we'll go to our other punch and drop it even further. Now the mandrel's out, then we'll take our drill and drill off the head of the rivet. That's the best way to do it if you plan to reuse the panel. If you're not going to reuse the panel, just take a chisel and knock the heads off and then punch the center out. Now, once the rivets are out, obviously you can just lift off the panel. But as you can see, that's going to take a while because every single one of these rivets has got to come out. We've only taken off about 40 and this is all the further we are. So we're going to be here a while.
If you like cars, if you like coffee, you're gonna love Gearz coffee cars. Because in each pack, you'll find a special blend of rich, robust coffee to get your blood pumping, as well as a collectible cartoon sticker and matching photo card of some of the wildest vehicles Stacey has built or featured over the years. Collect the whole series and be sure to keep an eye out for the ultra-rare Strange Brew card that are added to random packages to keep things interesting. It's Gearz coffee cars, the best bean on the car scene.
Hey, welcome back. We are going to take a break from replacing the skin on this Swamp Spryte, and we're going to jump into one of the biggest questions that comes up in the automotive world, and that is, are aftermarket parts as good or better than OEM? Yeah, it's a good question, and depending on who you ask, you can get a lot of different opinions either way. So today we're actually going to show you proof on how good the aftermarket parts can be, provided you pick the right company. Enter the Little Red Wagon. I bought this '99 Dodge over 20 years ago off of a used car lot with around 70,000 miles on the odometer. And one of the first things I did was put on a Skyjacker 5-inch lift. It then became my daily driver and was subjected to all kinds of use and testing in all kinds of situations and all kinds of weather. And over the years, it's been through several engines, multiple modifications, different exhaust systems, 2 paint jobs, and numerous sets of tires. And now, with almost 200,000 miles on the clock, there is one modification that has never given us a problem, never needed repair since the day we put it on. And we're talking about that Skyjacker 5-inch suspension lift. Oh, it's weathered and faded from the years and the elements that have hammered it and the obstacles I've hit. But the joints are still tight, the welds are still solid, and it's still doing the job where factory springs and links would have died a long time ago. So, how is this possible? Well, Skyjacker pretty much wrote the book on aftermarket off-road suspension, and they're celebrating their 50th anniversary this year. Take a look. Skyjacker began in 1974 as a 4-wheel drive center owned by husband and wife team Lonnie and Nell McCurry. And the goal was always to build better products for the growing off-road and mud racing crowd. Knowing the abuse that these vehicles were going to take, Lonnie knew that any parts he built would need to be superior to OEM parts in strength and durability, but also need to be easily serviceable. So high-quality steel and hardware were used, as well as urethane bushings and greasable joints, performance springs and shocks, all the good stuff. To keep up with an ever-changing market, Skyjacker continued to be involved in all forms of motorsports. So no matter where you went, you would probably see a Skyjacker vehicle in action or on display. When big lifts and multiple shocks were all the rage, Skyjacker offered those. When rock crawling became popular, Skyjacker was right in the middle of that, with bolt-on systems for that crowd. If you were into mud bogs, trail rides, or just looking good, there was a Skyjacker suspension that would handle that as well. But it wasn't just old vehicles either. As new models of trucks and SUVs came out, Skyjacker continued to develop kits for those, with the same goal in mind: perform like an OEM system on the road, but take you to a whole different level when you ventured off-road. And over the past 50 years, there have been numerous awards, accolades, and recognition that they were doing something right. And that's why I can put 20 years and hundreds of thousands of miles on an aftermarket suspension and have it still hold up. Matter of fact, the only reason we would replace anything that's on here with some of this new stuff on the table is we're restoring this truck. So once we get some nice paint on here, we're going to want the suspension to look just as good. That's a great way to pay tribute to a company that has a 50-year legacy of doing it right. You know, one of the first true freedoms you experience as a kid is that first bicycle. Man, it becomes your transportation to the world, or at least the local neighborhood. And in my neighborhood, man, we all had bikes. And we'd stick playing cards in the spokes, and we'd suck on black licorice, make it look like we were big biker dudes. And it was magic. But a bike wasn't just about transportation. No, it became an extension of your personality. And there were all kinds of bikes out there. There were 10 speeds, there were mountain bikes, there were Stingrays, there were BMX bikes, and they all had their strengths and weaknesses. And that's where the idea for the story of the purple bicycle came from. Because just like a bike might wish it had the talents or skills of another bike, so do we sometimes overlook our God-given talents and wish we had somebody else's talents, skills, because they seem to be better than ours. It's a simple lesson, but something we all need to be reminded of from time to time.
And now, Parts Bin.
Everybody knows that heat is the primary enemy of any high-performance vehicle, and trying to reduce heat is a never-ending battle because it could lose races or destroy expensive components if you don't control it. Well, now you can stop fighting that battle by yourself because Heat Shield Products has got a whole bunch of stuff to help you reduce temperatures, starting with this lava wrap. Now, as you can see, this goes around headers or pipes, and it utilizes volcanic rock fiber to reduce heat. And on these pipes, it'll drop at about 50%, so that's substantial. They also have wraps to go around mufflers, around starters, around catalytic converters or pipes. They even have little shields for your oil filter and your battery, but that's not all. They also have boots for your wires. They have shielding for your fuel lines or other wiring, anything that's susceptible to heat. Now, if you're a welder, they have these little welding blankets that'll keep those hot cherries from going where you don't want them to go. And they even have these little pillows to keep fatigue down. Now, if you want to keep temperature down inside the vehicle, they've got this sticky shield that goes on the firewall or floor. And if you need something under your carpet, they have this stealth shield. And these can reduce temperature inside the vehicle up to 50%. So that's substantial. So if you've got a hot rod or a muscle car, anything with an engine, you're generating heat. And the only way to beat that heat is with Heat Shield products. There's no question that electricity is a huge part of the automotive world. And with today's lights and accessories and modern fuel injection, making the right electrical connection is paramount to having a reliable vehicle. But if this is the only style crimper you have in your toolbox, you're going to be in trouble. Now, they're fine for a traditional style terminal, but for a fuel injection harness, they're not going to cut it. So Cornwell came out with this universal crimp tool set to take care of you. Now, as you can see, you've got a handle, then you've got some interchangeable ends that will allow you to do open barrel terminals, sealed terminals, solid pin terminals, pretty much everything that you're going to run into on an automobile. Now, to use this thing, just take the handle, open it up, spread the little wings, grab the head of your choice, slide it in place, push down on it, snap the wings in, and you're ready to make some crimps. Now, notice this has a ratcheting action. So this will take you right down to where you can do this crimp exactly how it needs to be. Not too tight, not too loose, perfect crimp every time. Then when you're done with it, if you need to change to another head, you just push it in and move on to the next. So if doing some wiring is in your future, don't skimp when it comes to the crimp. Get the Cornwell Universal Crimp Tool Set.
And now, what are you working on? Brought to you by Woodward Fabrication, selling quality metalworking equipment since 1966. And Mouse Blocker, protecting your vehicle.
Today's What Are You Working On comes from Steve, and he is from Westchester, Illinois. And if you take a look at this picture, you will swear you're looking at a 65 GTO. But if you look a little further, you'll see that you're looking at a 65 Pontiac Tempest Custom Station Wagon. Isn't that cool? Now, he said he was looking for something to pull a trailer that had a 68 Alfa Romeo on it. That's cool as well. And he didn't want to go with a truck, so he went with a classic wagon. Now, he said this thing had already been resto-modded, so he dug into it, found out it needed some work, which is typical. So the first thing he did is he tore the motor out. It's a 428. He put a stroker kit in it, punched it up to a 461. He updated the roller rockers. He added a Holley Terminator injection and updated the ignition. Now, he said he also had to redo the air conditioning and go through the electrical system, which is pretty typical on a project like this. Now, he said for the towing and hauling part, he put on a Reese hitch, which hides behind the rear license plate. And there's an airbag assist for towing. It's been updated. And he also said that this car originally came with a Muncie 4-speed. Man, how cool is that? Station wagon with a stick. But he said that wasn't good enough, so they put in a Tremec 5-speed. Now, he said obviously the transmission tunnel was a little small, so he's having to do a lot of metal work on that to get that to fit right. Now, he says once he gets all the transmission done, he's going to put in a 65 console out of a GTO, so the whole car looks like a 65 GTO wagon. Man, that is a great project. So to recognize such a cool wagon project, Steve, we're going to give you one of these metal shears from Woodward Fab. This will be great for cutting panels for that center console that you're working on. Then we're going to give you a Gearz fender cover to help protect that great pumpkin orange paint on that car. Then we're going to give you one of these deluxe project planning books. Now, this is really going to come in handy when you're going through that resto mod, figuring out what they did and what changes you're making. Then we went to the guys at Mouse Blocker, and we're going to give you a system. We're going to give you a Pro for your daily driver, a Pro for your project car, and then a big 1000 to go in your garage. So that's a nice setup. Then we're going to give you a Gearz Sergeant Rock diecast, and finally, we're going to give you some of Gearz coffee cars. Now, not only do you have great coffee in there, but there's also a sticker, so you're going to have to open it to find out what sticker you want. Heck, I may open that myself. Now, for the rest of you guys, if you want to get in on this and get your projects featured on the show, you got to send them to us. Go to our website, go to Gearz Nation, and submit it into What Are You Working On? The website's also the place to find out more information on any products you may have seen on the show, any Gearz merchandise, and how to join Gearz Nation. Also, make sure you check out our social media. That's Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, all at Official Stacey David. YouTube is also the place to view all of your favorite Gearz episodes, as well as the Gearz Restoration Series and our full project builds that follow a project from beginning to end. And finally, if you're a radio person, be sure and check out our podcast, Tales of a Gearhead. All right, that's all we got for you today. And you know what that means. It's time for you to get out and find your own project and get to working on it. I mean, it can be an old resto mod, it can be an old truck, it can even be a Swamp Sprite if you can find one. But whatever it is, you need to get out and start working on something. All right, we'll see you next time.